Welcome to the Deal Champs podcast. I'm your co-host Strat Daddy. The master of hair is getting a haircut down in Dallas today, so he won't be able to make it. We have Captain America with us and an amazing guest today, Mr. Alex Pardo. Real quick, we'll do some quick little intros. Again, my name's Stratton Brown. I've scaled two different companies to seven figures. We have a seven-figure real estate portfolio, and I got started in real estate with absolutely zero life skills, and it changed my life. I had no skills at the beginning, worked for someone else for about a year and a half, and then now we have a great business. We have the Captain America, Mr. Dean Rogers.
What's up, guys? Dean Rogers, your other co-host here. Excited for today's episode. Let's go, baby. I started my career in the NFL, transitioned to corporate, then into real estate. Been doing that for over a decade now in Central California. We are very close to doing 750 deals. We have an 8-figure rental portfolio and coaching students how to get started in real estate. You guys can always connect with me at deanrogers.com.
And we have Mr. Alex Pardo, the OG of real estate and one of the best, I'm going to call him the king of vibes. Pardo is the king of vibes. One of the nicest people I know. He's helped me. I've had hard conversations with him when we were thinking about shutting down one company and just like dealing with the, what was it? The identity crisis of shutting stuff down.
Yes.
And me and Pardo had a long talk at a bar at a storage mastermind at one point in time, but he's a great guy. He sent us a storage lead the other day, but Pardo, give us a quick little intro about you.
Yeah, guys. First off, appreciate the opportunity to be on the show, man. Love connecting with good people. And by the way, I'll take that nickname. I've never been called the king of vibes, but I'll take it, man. But yeah, dude, I still remember that conversation. And for me, that's what it's all about is those relationships that we build, right? So I started off in corporate finance, working for General Electric, did that for a couple of years. Realized that I wasn't going to be able to build the kind of lifestyle I wanted, create the kind of business, and more importantly, impact the lives that I had a desire to impact. So I went backpacking around Europe for about 3.5 months. And when I was on the train, the Eurorail, that's when I really committed to move back to Miami and get into real estate. I started to immerse myself in personal development books and really just started to expand my mind. And when I got back to Miami, I ended up at 25 years old, moving in with my parents, which was a big driver and motivator for me. I was single at the time, and I had a motivation to figure things out. And for me, the pain, guys, of going back into the corporate world and working for somebody was greater than the fear I had of potentially failing or not figuring it out. So I ended up going to a marketing for deals bootcamp. This was in Atlanta, Georgia, October of 2005. Got back home and I've always been a ready, fire, aim type of dude. So I literally took out a pre-foreclosure letter, made a bunch of photocopies at Kinko's at the time, and I sent out my first pre-foreclosure direct mail campaign. And a little bit under 3 months later, my first deal was a short sale that I ended up splitting with a buddy of mine, which we made 44 grand. So that was January of 2006 that I closed my first deal. Ran a wholesaling operation for about 14 years, did, I don't know, somewhere north of 700-800 deals. And then just decided that I was burnt out. The transactional business just wasn't aligned with my goals. And so about 4.5 years ago, ended up transitioning full-time into self-storage.
Do you and Steve still run your podcast, Pardo? Not
no,
your podcast,
so
your mastermind?
Yes. Steve and I used to run a mastermind called Ascend, which we ended up selling to one of our coaching clients about almost a year and a half ago. So that was, we went strong for about 4.5 years. And dude, it's interesting that you brought that up, because what we're doing now, like facilitating masterminds, being on podcasts, that's where I get my drive and energy, not so much in closing real estate deals, right? I like real estate. I'm pretty decent at it. But for me, that's a means to an end. I use storage, I use deals to be able to connect with others. And that's the reason I love coming on here, sharing on podcasts, leading and facilitating masterminds, being a part of high-level communities, which we're all a part of. That's actually where I met Dean last year. And so, yeah, man, I'm glad you asked that, because that's really what drives me, is connecting with people and building those relationships.
So 14 years in real estate investing from that first time you started. Was it all wholesaling? Did you get into flips? Did you get into rentals? What did that look like?
All the above. My bread and butter, Dean, has always been wholesaling, but I've done my fair share of fix and flips. I've done a lot of creative financing. with single family, and now I'm doing that with storage. I've done short sales. I've pretty much done everything except multifamily or ground up development, right? But yeah, my bread and butter of those 700 to 800 deals, I'd probably say 80% of those were wholesaling.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you said you got burnt out. What was it about the business that you got burnt out? Do you feel like you maybe
Yeah.
just didn't get the right systems in place or the right team members in place, or you had turnover? What was your story as to why you just felt burnt out and tired of it?
It's a great question. I'll kind of rewind to 2000. For the first 6 years or so of my career, Dean, I was a one-man show. And then eventually I read the 4 Hour Work Week, I think in 2009, hired my first VA, and I got a taste of what it's like to delegate and not have to wear all the hats in the business. 2012 is when I hired an acquisition manager. And between 2012 and 2020, pretty much the beginning of COVID, I focused on building a team. And I made my fair share of mistakes, the wrong hires, not having the right systems and processes. But in 2017, end of 2017, I ended up joining Collective Genius. And when I joined that mastermind, I got exposed to a lot of different models. And I saw people that we all know that had big teams and were doing 10, 15, 20, 30 deals a month. And I fell into the trap of like, go big or go home. Right. But when I got into real estate, it was never because of wholesaling real estate, right? Like I wanted cash flow, I wanted time freedom. And I made the mistake that you guys didn't. I wasn't investing into assets. And I remember in 2017, right before I joined CG, I told my wife, I'm like, yes, we're doing 50, 60, 70 deals a year. You know, I was never a high volume wholesaler, but we were doing our fair share of deals every year. And I said, you know, there's got to be a better way. It's like, I'm tired of deals falling out of contract or people going around us. Like there was always fires and hiccups we had to put out. And I felt like I had the right team members. I felt like I had the processes and the systems in place, but I didn't like having to start from scratch every single month, right?
Yep.
We had to close 2 deals just to break even. I think my overhead at the time was about 40 to 45 grand. And I just kept feeling like, man, there's got to be a better way. This feels like a grind. It feels like a hustle. And by the way, I'm not knocking wholesaling because you guys clearly have figured it out. I probably could have done a better job of just delegating more, leading more, but I constantly felt like I wasn't talking to sellers and buyers. I wasn't wearing those hats, but I felt like I was an arsonist and I was always putting out a fire. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to start buying rentals because that's my way to freedom and passive income. And then I got to 5 rentals in Cleveland, Ohio, and I quickly realized this is not very passive. And I happened to be coaching somebody who owned a storage facility. And that's when it really opened my eyes to that asset class. But yeah, Dean, back to your question, could I have done things better? 100%. I think wholesaling is great to generate a bunch of cash. I think the key is, what do you then do with that cash? And I think it's super important to take that earned active income and put it into assets that produce cash flow.
Okay. So I guess to build off of that, so and everybody's going to have different desires, right? Like some people may love the transactional aspect of it. Other people, they're just like, I'm tired of it. So for you to then transition out of that, was that super painful? Was it slow? Was it fast?
It wasn't. So I made the decision in 2019. In fact, I was at Collective Genius, and there's some people that we know that can vouch for this. And I was in a room presenting, and I don't know if you know the format of CG, but you know, you go and you present in front of 35 to 50 investors about what your challenge is, what your ask is. There's a give. And I remember that presentation. I was like, you want to know what? Like, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm just going to be a truth teller. I'm going to be very authentic. And I went up there and I was like, guys, I had this business. I think at the time we had 9 people. You know, I had the office and the COO and the whole 9, right? And I'm like, I'm not satisfied. I'm not fulfilled. You know, yes, we're doing well financially, but this is not aligning with my goals and vision. And I was just uber transparent about the challenges I was having. And it's interesting because after that talk, I had probably a third of the room come up to me and it's like, dude, thank you for sharing that. Cause like, I'm in the same boat. And 2019, I decided I'm shutting this thing down. When COVID came, it acted as an accelerator. And I just said, you want to know what? Instead of delaying this decision, because my concern was my team,
Yeah.
like creating a soft landing for them. And I remember when COVID hit, I was just like, you want to know what? This is a blessing in disguise. I don't have the desire and the energy to switch our model, because we were going belly to belly, face to face. We weren't doing the virtual model like some people I know were doing prior to COVID. And I was like, I just don't have the energy to like switch this. And I asked myself an important question. I said, if I'm still running this operation a year from now, how would that feel? And I remember that feeling in the pit of my stomach that almost felt like the pit in the stomach I had it when I was in my corporate job, and it was Sunday night and I had to wake up on Monday to go. And I'm like, this is even worse because it's my business.
Yeah.
So man, I had a long, hard conversation with my team. I started working with them to create a soft landing for all of them. And by June of 2020, I was completely out of wholesaling.
I feel you're a deal guy though at the same time, because storage deals are still deals. You just get to do bigger deals that make more money, and they're a different headache, I would say. I thought it would be less of a headache. Some of them are a really big headache. Some of them are pretty nice.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we went live here. I've learned a lot in the last 4.5 years. But yeah, dude, I still love doing deals. I still love transacting. It's just a different transaction now. I'm no longer figuring out how to do 50 to 100 plus deals a year. I'm focused on doing up to a handful of really, really good deals every year. And so it's just a different game I'm playing, right? I think what I'm doing now with storage is more aligned with why I got into real estate late 2005, right? Cash flow, all the tax benefits we talk about, and just having more time freedom. Like doing storage for me anyways has allowed me more freedom to coach people, to do this type of thing. And again, that's where I kind of get my energy and fulfillment.
Quick shout out to Wayne on my IG. He said he just purchased his first storage facility back in November.
Nice.
Let's go.
Let's go,
Great
baby.
job, Wayne. Amazing.
I
Love it.
always say storage is the only real estate that actually cash flows that I've seen. If you're buying
Man,
into it good. Like the single family stuff and multifamily stuff, I only know one dude who like really cash flows and he has a $50 million portfolio. But the storage stuff, from my personal experience, if you have one stabilized, it is the best asset in the world because you get real cash flow. The depreciation is awesome, and it's really not super management intensive once you get it all set up.
No, I find it's very easy to manage. Like I wasn't a very good fix and flipper, right? I didn't like having a rental portfolio, and I'm not as smart as Dean and having figured out how to scale a portfolio. And so I like the idea of no tenants and toilets, and that's what appealed to me about storage. And then when I learned that storage is a business, an actual business with the benefits of real estate, for me that was like, okay, this aligns with what I want. And the fact that to your point, Stratton, if you're in the right market, right, and you're not dealing with a lot of the headaches that being in a rough market can bring, like break-ins and things of that nature, it's a pretty easy asset to manage overall.
So how did you go through that decision-making process? Because you've got your business, you're kind of feeling like you've got some burnout and some fatigue doing the business. How did you make sure you weren't just having shiny object syndrome, right? You're around, especially you're in a mastermind, you're around a bunch of other people. Some of them are doing different things. How'd you make sure that like, yes, this is what I'm going to do? Did you go through a long, like due diligence process? Did you just say that one? How'd you say it before, or how do people say it? Fire ready aim or whatever. Yeah. So did you just jump into it, or how'd you approach it?
No, I didn't. I started thinking about self-storage in the end of 2018, beginning of 2019 is when I first started to really look long and hard at that asset class. And so I started to research it. I started to have conversations with people I knew in masterminds that own storage facilities. And I just started to study the asset class. I remember comparing it to multifamily. For whatever reason, I incorrectly assumed that if I was going to transition out of residential, naturally it feels like multifamily is just the next step. And then I just started to compare those asset classes. And then when I started coaching that gentleman who owned the storage facility, and as you guys know, when you coach somebody, you get an inside look into the good, the bad, and the ugly of the business. And I saw that he had a lot of the things that I desired. So no, Dean, to answer your question, I didn't just ready, fire, aim. I didn't just jump into it. And I think it was because I had a team of people that were relying on me. You know, my overhead was 45 grand a month. So it wasn't like a light switch. And even if it was, I wanted to make sure that they were in a good place. And so that was part of the reason I didn't just shut the business down like that. Had it just been me, yes, it would have been ready, fire, aim. I would have just done it and figured it out. Now, fortunately for me, to be transparent, I had some other income streams, right, that allowed me the benefit of just turning off a wholesaling operation that was doing at the time, I don't know, 3-4 deals a month on average. So because of that, I had the confidence to, I mean, when I shut down the business June 2020, I pretty much didn't do anything except for the podcast and the mastermind for a good 6 months. Right. I remember a coach of mine telling me, he's like, Alex, you are wired to go want to conquer the next mountain. I encourage you not to do that. Take some time to reflect, you know, just figure out, gain clarity about what the next step is. And dude, that was some of the best advice. Like that 6-month sabbatical I took the summer of 2020 was awesome, man. I just gained so much clarity. And then most importantly, I leaned into my faith even more. You know, Strat, you and I were talking about identity crisis. Remember that conversation we had I think it was at the hotel or at the bar?
Yeah, it was like at the bar or something.
Yeah, that was the one thing, guys, that I think going through that time, I was struggling with. And what I realize now, having grown from that experience, is that I was in my head propping myself up too much. And what I've learned is that people didn't care about me and what decision I made. And I thought that because I was the host of the Flip Empire show and because, you know, I had established somewhat of a name and a reputation in the industry, like what would people think if they realized that I decided to shut down this business? And I'm like, oh, they're going to think it's because of COVID and I couldn't figure it out. And then it was all this ego BS crap that at the end of the day was made up in my head. And I was giving myself too much importance. Like people didn't care about me and why I shut down my wholesaling business. That's just the truth. So I remember recording a podcast episode. I think it was like, I don't know, episode 426 or 427, where I just like, dude, I was just super transparent. And I told people exactly why I made the decision. And the very thing I was fearing was the very thing that opened up just a lot of deep conversations with a lot of people in the industry. That why I decided to make that move.
Well, Pardo, tell me if you disagree with this, and this is slightly a tangent. I think if you buy 1 to 2 facilities a year over the next 20 years, you'll be worth $80 to $100 million.
It depends.
If you continue at like a good pace, you're buying them 10,000 square feet and above. And if you just buy 1 to 2 a year, you could be worth multiple 8 figures, bare minimum.
I think it's very possible. Now, if you were buying 2 small facilities a year for 10 years, could you be worth, you know, that kind of money? I don't know. I would question that, right? If I'm buying, let's just say 20,000 square feet of storage every year for 10 years, you're going to be well into the 7 figures for sure. Could you be into the 8 figures? Possibly, right? What I've realized with storage is that it's more about quality than quantity. Right.
If you can get into the quality ones, I'd say it's been the hardest thing that I've seen is getting into a B class asset in a decent market is a lot harder than people think.
Sure. I would agree with that.
To find somebody that's willing to sell or to find it for a good price.
Both.
Yeah. I think what I would share with people now is that don't compare this market, and this is going to sound super obvious. And I think it's worth saying anyways. Don't compare this market to when people got involved in storage 4, 5, 6 years ago, right? Completely different market. That market doesn't exist. And so now what I share with my coaching clients is you just have to go through more opportunities. You have to underwrite and analyze more deals than I did 3, 4, 5 years ago. That's just the reality of it, right? And if you're willing to do that work, I teach something called the LMAO method. LMAO, and it's not the acronym that first comes to mind. L is adding storage facilities to your prospects list every day, at least 5. M is having meaningful conversations with storage owners, at least 3 to 5 every single day. A is analyzing at least one deal a day. And then O is offers. If you can get to the point where you're making an offer a week, if you do that consistently, I believe anybody can find the right storage opportunity. The question is, are you going to stick with it and be consistent long enough
100%.
to find the right opportunity? So, dude, storage is not complicated. It's a relatively easy business to get into. Like anything, it just requires consistency. It requires focusing on the right things. And that's connecting with people, analyzing deals, making offers. At least that's the first stage to me of storage.
Okay, I got a couple things in IG. We got Chandler Sane, who was on the podcast just last week. He said the goats. What's up, Chandler? We got Mayella, who's got a question for us. She's asking, she has 15 units and she wants to dispo those off market. She's asking how we would dispo those.
I wouldn't sell them off market.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do it. Don't underestimate going into storage Facebook groups, because I know several people that have sold storage facilities going into storage Facebook groups. Now, the key there is, Strat, you've seen this, right? In storage Facebook groups where sometimes people will market a storage facility and you'll get like 40, 50, 60 comments of people dropping their email.
Yeah.
Right? One thing you can do, take this with a grain of salt. Let me frame it this way. What I've heard people do is hiring a virtual assistant, going into these storage Facebook groups, and then getting all those emails and building a buyer's list so that when you do have a storage deal you want to dispo, now you have...
She clarified it's actually not a storage deal.
Okay.
Is it like 15 houses?
That's what I'm about to find out.
Either way, I was going to say that the same would apply. It just wouldn't be a storage Facebook group. It could be whatever, if it's a house or mobile home, whatever that might be, right?
I think the MLS is the best buyer's list in the world. And if you have an asset, you should put it on the MLS and you'll get a better price.
These
if
are
you have a residential,
if you have a residential asset,
yes.
I think it's the best way to go. Yeah. Maybe in storage, you could get a schmuck to come buy a bad asset from you. Because it is like a hot asset class. But if like you have 15 units you're trying to offload, I just know most of the buyers we sell to are not going to give you good prices. If you can have some patience and sell them off slowly, you'll probably get 20, 30% more, in my opinion. And then if you're like afraid of using a broker, you could use like a flat fee service, negotiate it all yourself, and then they could pay their own commissions and you only have to pay like $250 to sell it.
Dude, okay, so Mayella, she specified. She says they are 15 unit complex, and it's under contract. She doesn't own them, so she's wondering what's the best way to dispo those off market.
Okay, Facebook.
Yeah,
like just what Pardo said.
I was going to add too that I think, and this might be controversial, or people might disagree, and that's fine. I think a really, really good real estate agent, like a really good agent or broker, is worth their 5-6% commission.
100% agree.
Yeah.
I don't know why I see real estate investors kind of run away or shy from working with. If you find the right broker,
the right one,
they're going to get you a premium that you probably wouldn't able to get. And that 5-6% is money well spent, in my opinion.
100%, dude. Guys, that's really, really good advice. So especially if you got something like 15 units, okay, it's not your everyday 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single family home where there's a bigger buyer's pool. You're dealing with a little bit more, I wouldn't call it complex, but just a higher class type of investment, right? And so if you got 15 units, 20 units, 100 units, whatever it is, if you can go find the top real estate agents, real estate brokers in your market for those properties, and get them involved, incentivize them financially, they've got those people on speed dial, right? It could be a 1031 exchange buyer who's going to come in and just drop that cash. They almost don't care that they're paying retail price. They need to put that money somewhere. It could be somebody who's just got a bunch of units and wants to add on some more. That's great advice to lean into that. It'll be good time worth spent too, right? The quality of buyers coming as a result from that effort, as opposed to fishing around in a multi-unit, multi-family Facebook group is probably higher with that broker.
I would agree. I would also add, guys, one more thing is I think as entrepreneurs and real estate investors, I think we need to be smarter about auditing our energy. And ask yourself, if you're going to take something on in order to save a few bucks, like not working with an agent or a broker, the right one, what is the opportunity cost? Like that time spent, the mental bandwidth, the energy you're going to spend trying to dispose something that may not be in your wheelhouse. Might you do it successfully? Yes. And at what cost? And so I think it's really important that we audit our energy and ask yourself, like, dude, our time is scarce and limited. Like once the 24 is gone, it's gone and we're on to the next day. Be really, really intentional about where you're spending your time.
Send me the deal. And right here in the chat, if it's in Central California, in that chat, tell me how much it is a door. And I could tell you if you're wasting your time or not. And then what you think the cap rate is. Because a lot of people just don't really understand how to underwrite, let's say, a bigger deal. And they lock something up and then they don't quite understand what stuff is moving at per door or the cap rate that people are actually buying at, because you may think you have a great deal and then you go and you find out like, oh wow, I'm $30,000 a door overpriced, or stuff over here is moving at X cap, not at Y cap. And that's happened to me multiple times where like we think we have something, but it still just wasn't the case. So that could be another thing.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point.
Pardo, have you used ChatGPT Operator to run comps yet for your storage stuff?
You know, I've played around with it. I haven't been overly impressed with the output. Now, I have been leaning more into ChatGPT the last 6 to 8 months or so. And by the way, it's one of the things I'm so grateful for. Like, what an incredible tool, especially if you're really good. Oh, it's insane. Especially if you get really good at the prompt engineering, right? Like what you feed it.
That's what it is.
But no, man, if somebody has figured that out, I'd love to learn from them, because I've played around with leveraging ChatGPT to help me analyze deals, and I get some decent info. What I have used it for more that I like is researching certain markets.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I've been using ChatGPT more in terms of my storage business. But dude, it's just an incredible machine that I feel like gets more insane by the day. I mean, it's, to your point, man, what a time to live. It's crazy.
Well, dude, we're going to have robots living in our house in 10,
5 years.
maybe even less than 10 years, that are running on ChatGPT and just, hey, robot, tell me what I need to do on this investment deal. They're going to just come and tell you what you need to do.
It's wild. Yeah, I'm leaning more, guys, into by no means do I consider myself even remotely close to being an expert in AI. But that's one of the areas that coming into this year, I identified like it would be foolish not to pay attention and not to really understand AI, because everybody's got the tool. The question is, how well do you know how to use it, right? And I think, unfortunately, people are going to get lazy and they're just going to like copy paste. And I think that's where people are going to go wrong.
Totally. I already see it. People in their copy with their messages or marketing material. I know it's the chat GPT copy, and it's copied and paste. I'm like, oh,
it's the emojis. The emojis.
Yeah. By the way, and I'll put myself out there, especially like I was guilty of that, because sometimes, you know, like it's time and you want to put content out there but what I've quickly realized is that, like, first of all, like, do you write like that? Second of all, like all the crazy emojis. So I think it's worth your while to leverage it, but then add your tweaks and add your flavor and add your insight and feed the system, like, so it speaks like you, and then take it and just modify it, tweak it, make it something that's unique in your own. So like, I totally get it.
So Pardo, what are you using ChatGPT for as far as market research? Like, give like a breakdown of like, all right, so here's what I'm looking into for this market. This is what I need. This is my minimum threshold and everything else.
Yeah. So as an example, like I like to be in markets that have like, I'll give you a simple example, population between 5,000 and 60,000 people, right? And I want to be in a market that has a medium household income of at least bare minimum $50,000. But ideally, if I can be 60,000 medium household income enough. And then I like to be where the population is increasing over time, even if it's just a 2-3% growth, you know, from 2020 to 2023. Those are like initially that's the market I want to be in. And then I've been leveraging ChatGPT more in terms of figuring out like, hey, how many square feet of storage are if I was to feed it an address within a 5-mile radius of this? Because Stratton, as you know, and Dean, I'm sure you know, like in storage, it's super, super important to be in markets that have an undersupply of storage, right? There's something called the square foot per capita, which is just a measurement of what's the population relative to the amount of square feet of storage in a given area. And so being in the market, that's a mistake I see a lot of people, a lot of storage operators make, is just buying storage in the wrong markets or in a market that is oversupplied with storage. So just been leveraging ChatGPT more in terms of market research. But dude, I don't know if you've checked out Tracked IQ. Man, awesome tool that I wish I had this tool when I got started in storage. TrackedIQ.com. We just had the owner present to our Storage Wins community, and man, it just makes market research like so simple, like even better than ChatGPT in my opinion.
I love that. Have you seen anybody go into a market that has been oversupplied and get their ass kicked?
Yeah, for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
How long ago?
Dude,
like, was this recent?
Yeah, within the last couple of years, I would say. I mean, I think 2023 is, I can think of somebody who was in a market that they just had a really, really hard time leasing up, right? They were projecting a modest 3 to 4 move-ins a month, and they were getting 1 to 2, if that. And it just took, like, they weren't hitting their projections. It just took them a lot longer to lease up, increase the revenue, and ultimately the net operating income. And that particular person, if I remember correctly, they had investor money. And I think they were paying an 8% pref. So they weren't making money. Their investors were making money, but they weren't. And it's because one of the mistakes they made, Stratton, is they bought in a market not realizing that there was going to be an additional 30 or 40,000 square feet of storage coming into that market online within the next like 4 to 6 months.
I think I heard this story. Like they bought it and then they didn't. We've even started to like, you can call a city or anything else to see if anything's going on.
Yep.
But I think I know who you're talking about. And they bought it and instantly a brand new asset essentially came online and they didn't know about it. And
exactly
that made it extremely hard.
Yeah. So imagine buying a storage facility and then like a month or 2 or 3 later, you have a competitor offering 30,000 square feet of storage brand new right up the street from you. Like, believe it, that's going to impact your ability to lease up. So anytime that we're looking at a market, we always check with the city, the county. Now Tracked IQ gives you that information. Are there open permits for storage? Is there new supply of storage coming online? That's really, really important.
Dean, someone named the Zacharino just said, "Hey, bro, thanks for closing a deal with me. The deal just recorded."
Let's
Someone
go.
did a deal with you and it just recorded. Let's go.
Let's go.
By the way, how boss is it that Dean looks like he has no idea who this is or what that deal is, and he's like, all right, just close another deal. Has no clue what it is, but that's awesome.
Let's freaking go. Whichever deal that is, and whichever person that is, I freaking love you. Let's go. Let's do another one.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
So I got some questions. I'm getting excited. I got so many questions to ask. So when it comes to looking at deals, you talked about what kind of markets you're looking for. What's the ideal type of deal that you're looking for? Obviously you could, I could tell you, I want to find a 400 unit apartment complex and I want it to be at 50% loan to value and have a ton of equity. But what's the typical deal you're looking at that gets you excited and that is your bread and butter so far?
Yeah, I'm going to answer your question, but let me take a few steps back because you don't even realize that the question just opened up something that I think is so important that can help people. And this applies to storage. This applies to any asset class. Develop a buy box. Develop your deal avatar. Get crystal clear on what what is a deal to you. And then Stratton, you know this, or you may know this, I should say. My very first deal that I bought in Mississippi, a 43,000 square foot facility, the only reason I got that deal before anybody else was because I developed a crystal clear buy box, a storage avatar, And I was like a farmer planting seeds with everybody in my network. And Ken Holmes, who you know, Stratton, called me and he said, "Hey, dude, I think I found your first deal. Check your inbox." I checked it. What on the phone? I go to him. What makes you think that? He goes, "Well, you've been telling me for weeks exactly what you want. Well, here it is." And sure enough, like that's exactly what I was looking for. So now to answer your question, Dean, is dude, for me, the sweet spot is like 20 to 50,000 square feet of storage.
Okay.
Right. Like I'm not, you can do well in the small ones, right? I think Stratton and Kalani have done very well in small ones. So I'm not saying you can't. It's just for me, I like that 20 to 50,000 net rentable square feet of storage. I like to be in markets like Tennessee, the Carolinas. I'm avoiding the coastal markets now because insurance has become a real challenge, right? It's getting harder and harder to underwrite these deals with the insurance premiums where they are. So I'm avoiding the coastal markets for the most part. But I like to be in markets that are undersupplied with storage that check off those boxes I shared earlier, job growth, population growth, healthy medium household income. And I like light value add deals. In other words, I'm not looking to buy a deal that is 20% occupancy, that it's going to take me 12 to 18 months to lease up. I'm not looking for any heavy construction projects, like what we refer to as CapEx, capital expenditures. I'm not looking for that. My sweet spot is that 20 to 50,000 square foot mom and pop operated facility that they're not treating it like a business. They may or may not have a website. They have no marketing in place. They likely don't have a gate. And if they do, it's not automated. So that I can come in and just implement some simple systems, implement like a 3-pronged management strategy of third-party management, call center, and boots on the ground. That's why I like 20 to 50,000 square feet, because I don't want to necessarily be the operator managing the boots on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about, so 10,000 square feet is the only, we had one that size, but the boots on the ground lived right behind the facility, so the boots on the ground worked. And if you go any smaller, it can't self-sustain itself, is what I tell everybody. Like, you could try and go buy these dinky ones, but then there's no real cash flow. And if something does go wrong, you're not diversified enough. And then, and let me know what you think about this. It's like if you go 50,000 and above, you're not going to be able to compete, in my opinion. Typically, they're
I was
going
going
to
to
be too
ask you, do you
sophisticated.
have any interest going bigger?
It's not that I don't have any interest. If I found the right opportunity, I certainly would. But what I have found is that like that 20 to 50, 20 to 60, maybe 1,000 square feet, like it's not big enough for the REITs, like Public Storage and Extra Space. Those guys are typically looking for 80 to 100,000 square feet and up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a sweet spot for me. And then a lot of newer investors, they either get intimidated by the asset class or by the numbers. And so they tend to focus on the smaller assets. To Stratton's point, a 10,000 square foot facility likely is not going to generate enough revenue where it can support a third-party management company and the expense that brings. So that means they have to self-manage and operate through a boots on the ground. So that's why for me, that 20 to 50, 20 to 60,000 net rentable square feet range is just like my bread and butter. It's not that if I found a 75,000 square foot opportunity and it was really good that I wouldn't pursue it. I certainly would. The numbers are the numbers. It either works or it doesn't, right? But if you ask me where I'm focusing my efforts, it's in that range. And then the other thing is I like to be in, like, if I can hop on a plane and be at the airport of that city within a 1-hour drive of where the facility is, that's ideal. When I owned 2 in Mississippi, it was a connecting flight. And not that I had to go out there often, but not ideal.
It's not worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Do you own anything in Florida, and have you had issues with those things of like actually getting insurance re-upped, or has it just like decimated your cash flow?
Yeah, no, man, I do own a facility in Florida. It's actually on the market for sale right now. We bought that one on 90% seller financing with ridiculous terms. And yeah, man, insurance. I mean, when we bought the thing, our insurance was just under 36 grand. It was like 35,000 and change. Mind you, this is a 24,000 square foot facility, but it happens to be on a barrier island. Like literally, we are down the street from the beach, like legit down the street from the beach. Literally, it's a 30-second drive to the beach. And then 3-4 months after closing, we got a letter that they were going to drop us unless we paid this crazy premium. So Yes. Fortunately, we worked it out, but Florida facilities and facilities on the coast, especially like South Louisiana, make sure that when you're underwriting these deals, you're putting in a realistic number for what insurance is, because that could absolutely decimate the cash flow in the deal.
So what cap do you have to sell that one at realistically?
We'll probably end up selling at like a 7.5 on that one.
Is
Yeah,
it
I think
climate?
it's got some climate control. Yeah,
So
it's
they're
got some.
getting a good price because of the insurance. Because I feel like you can sell anything at 7.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Most of the people that have expressed interest in that deal are coming cash, and then they're putting
Really?
long-term. Yeah, and then they're putting long-term debt on it. It's just a really good market. Like, I remember how I told you I look for markets where 50, 60 grand is the medium household income. Dude, in this market, the medium household income is 143 grand.
Yeah, you're set.
So it's just a very affluent area. It's just the dirt itself is really valuable. So we're attracting the eye. It's too small, obviously, for the big players, but we're attracting the eye of those mid-sized players that have access to cash.
Oh, that's sexy. And what were the terms you got on it?
90% seller financing. We got a 5-year term, 3.25 fixed interest rate. And then here's the cool part. We had no payments for the first 12 months, which allowed us to implement our systems, raise the rates, and then we amortized it over 35 years. So it really
very
maximized.
nominal monthly.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it just really reduced our debt service, maximized our cash flow. In storage, for context, usually when you underwrite, you're amortizing these over 20 or 25 years. We got 35-year am. So yeah, we just got really good terms. And that's one of the things that I think is important to highlight about storage, is that because these mom and pop operators are business owners, at least in my experience, Stratton, the conversation with these owners about seller financing is so much easier than the education I had to take a motivated seller through about what it meant to turn them into the bank.
Right. 100%. So I'm curious about your favorite marketing strategies, how you're finding the sellers, how you like to get in front of them. Is it a bunch of different ways, one specific way? How deep you go within those different marketing strategies.
Yeah.
So let's start with what your favorite marketing strategy or strategies are.
It's going to sound like I'm giving you a smart ass answer, but I promise you I'm not. My favorite marketing strategy is the one that you're going to work and that you're going to be consistent with. So
Smart
that's
ass.
big picture. No, and I knew it was going to sound like that, but no, I genuinely mean that. People always ask me like, what works for marketing. The campaign that you're going to do consistently is the one that works in my favorite. Having said that,
I say the same thing, by the way.
Okay, good. Having said that, there's been 3 different marketing strategies that have been responsible for every single storage deal I've done. Direct mail, number 1, right? Love direct mail. Like, direct mail has probably been responsible out of the, 800 or so deals I've done in my career, let's say. I'd say direct mail has probably been responsible for at least half of those. Right? So direct mail has always been my bread and butter. Cold calling, right, is another way that I've gotten deals, and I love it because it's free. Now, most people shy away from cold calling. Most people don't like cold calling. For me, it's easy to talk to people. It's free. I can hop on Google Maps in less than 60 seconds and find a bunch of mom and pop facilities. So I like that if you don't have money and you're willing to put the time and energy into it. And then relationships, dude. Relationships. And when I say relationships, I'm talking with brokers. I'm talking with wholesalers. Just like, when people think of storage, or when people think of insert whatever asset class you're into, if they don't think of you, you're not doing it right. Like, you're just not talking about it enough. Like, again, I always use the analogy of being a farmer. You got to plant seeds with people about what you do, what you're looking for, and present opportunities. So direct mail, cold calling, and relationships have been responsible for all the deals I've done.
So let's start with relationships and the networking. My understanding in the commercial real estate investing world, especially storage, relationships with brokers is a key way to get access to these deals before they hit the market, and to get good deals. So can you share with me like what your current strategies are to either build relationships with wholesalers, where you're finding them, how you're talking to them, how you're maybe structuring stuff? Is it any different than the real estate investing that I'm doing. Brokers, how you're finding them. Like, do you have just like a very straightforward, systematic, I'm going to Google top brokers in blah, blah, blah for self-storage or something like that. So can you tell me how you're approaching your networking relationships, or is it just kind of like, I'm just going to talk to people at random?
It's a combination of both. It's a little bit more systematic and strategic than that. So let me start with brokers, right? And by the way, brokers, I want to set the right expectation. I'm not the guy on here saying, hey, just go build a relationship with a broker and they're going to send you deals. Like, it's going to take some time and energy, obviously, to build that relationship, because brokers don't want to waste time with tire kickers. Like, you haven't proven yourself to that broker. So big picture, like when I go to Crexy.com or loopnet.com, which think of that like the commercial MLS, and I pull up certain areas I'm looking for storage. When I contact them, I want to convey a few things right from the jump. I want to convey confidence. I want to convey, I'm not here to waste their time, because they get calls all the time from people kicking. So I'm not going to ask them, hey, what's the net rentable square footage of I'm not going to ask them anything that I can find on the OM, on the operating memorandum, right? That's a mistake people make all the time. They don't call a person and waste their time with stuff that, like, you're just being lazy. So I communicate confidence. I communicate I'm not there to waste their time. I tell them, hey, I'm a storage owner operator. Now, when I didn't have storage, I said, hey, I'm working with somebody who owns X, square footage of storage, whatever. I'm trying to let them know I'm not here to waste your time. I'm serious. Here's where I think people go wrong. When you have an opportunity that a broker sends you, get back to them the same day and let them know why it works or why it doesn't. Most people don't do that. Exactly. Most people get a deal and they'll ghost the broker, or they'll get back to them in a week. Like, that is a surefire way to basically put yourself in the category of most people. And then whenever I finish a conversation with a broker, a wholesaler, I don't always do this, but I try to be very mindful. I'll send them a video text thanking them for their time. Hey, I really enjoyed connecting with you. I look forward to working with you. I'm always looking for ways that I can contribute or add value. So sometimes I will connect that broker or wholesaler with somebody in my network who's also looking for deals. Now, that is very different from, like, why would I want to connect that broker with another investor looking for the same asset class I am? Well, because I have a mentality that there's deals out there. Like, I'm not worried about it. And I know that is a value add to that person and the other person as well. So I'm almost like killing two birds with one stone. So my brain is wired to, like, how can I make connections? How can I add value? So whenever I approach relationships, guys, it's always, how can I give without the expectation of anything in return? I do that with brokers. I do that with wholesalers. I do that with title companies. I do that with friends. How can I help? Right? Like, hopping off this, sharing your podcast, right? Not just the one I'm on, but like, hey guys, check out the Deal Champs podcast. Dean, Stratton, Jason, great guy. Like, what can I do to advance whatever goals you have? That's how I'm thinking about relationships.
Bro, and you are the king of it, and you are the king of relationships. Because, like, everything you say is 100% what you live by, and I can attest to it.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that.
100%.
Yeah, I think life just becomes more fulfilling, man, when, like, you're not out to get something. When you just want to, like, help and you just want to contribute, you just want to connect with people, and you're not looking for anything in return. Man, it just, I don't know, you can take a breath. Like, just be a good person. Just figure out how you can help people. And then, by the way, laws of reciprocation tend to kick in anyway. Even though that's not why I do it, it's a natural byproduct.
Yep, I totally agree with that. So I want to go into, you were talking about building these relationships with brokers, not asking for obvious things that are in there, responding back quickly. So do you feel like, from the relationship standpoint, the ones that you've built so far, that there is enough opportunities to review, right? Not every, like anything, not every lead is going to be a deal. Do you feel like you have enough leads and opportunities from relationships to review and underwrite and make decisions on? I know you said you're looking for 4 or 5 plus good deals a year. You're not looking to do 5 a month. Does that keep you pretty busy, or is the way you have things set up. Like you have a few that you look at a month. You're just kind of taking life as it comes.
Yeah,
And
such a
I
good
just
question.
happened to find a good one. Or are you just
Real
like cranking through looking at a bunch?
Pardo, are you doing 5
It-
deals a year? Are you
No,
buying
no, but
5
that's
of
what I
them a
look.
year?
That's what I look for. I usually do on average, since I got in storage, 2 deals a year is what I've been averaging. There's one year I did 3, but
Okay.
one of those was a wholesale. No, I'm not doing 5 deals, but that's up to 5 deals. Like, dude, 2 to 3 solid storage deals a year, you could be in a very, very good place, right? Just comparing that to when I was doing 40, 50, 60 single family deals a year, and it felt like a grind. But Dean, to answer your question, man, it's a really good question. I go through seasons. I go through periods where I'm like, I'm in lead gen acquisitions mode, right? Like right now, I'm in one of those seasons because I'm being more intentional about bringing wholesale opportunities into our Storage Wins community, right? Because I have a community of people now looking for their first deal.
Makes
And if
sense.
I could add value to them by just handing them wholesale opportunities in a silver platter, I feel like it's a win-win. That deal I sent Stratton, which didn't work out from, I'm in a season now of just cranking up the marketing. By the way, I love to work with people in collaboration. So I have a student who's really, really good at marketing and hiring VAs that I've partnered with on a JV basis to generate the leads. And then I have another person in our community who loves talking to storage owner operators. And I've just become the connector for me to get a piece of these deals without having to do the marketing, talk to the owners. You know, I'm just focused on one key part of the equation. So that's a big takeaway for people listening, is that if you're thinking about storage or any big commercial asset class, you don't have to wear all the hats to all parts of the deal. Figure out what you enjoy and you're really, really, really good at, and you can focus on that and bring and add value to other people by bringing that to the table. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Oh yeah, and there's enough room to do it, because like you can't do that in a wholesale business. There's just not enough meat on the bone. With storage
It's more
deals,
challenging for sure. Yeah.
there's a decent amount of meat on the bone to where, hey, it makes sense in order to do this. Even on wholesale fees, you can make some good rips on wholesale storage facilities.
Dude, yeah, I've done 3 storage wholesale deals and I haven't done one under 99 grand. Like usually like my range has been between 99 and 150. Pretty good rips on these storage wholesale deals. By the way, it's ironic because I wanted to get away from wholesaling, and my very first storage deal was a wholesale with 2 mutual friends, Stratton, and we ended up splitting a $99,000 wholesale fee, and then we retained 15% equity in that project, which we still own today. So storage, to Stratton's point, the pie can be big enough where you can get a rip and still retain equity in the deal.
When you wholesaled those things, did you wholesale them and they got a loan, or did you wholesale it cash?
No, this operator, one of them was private money. I don't remember how the first guy got it. It wasn't, I don't think he got a loan. I think he went hard money. I think one was a hard money lender, one was private, and one was just their cash.
Do you know anybody who's wholesaled one and someone's gotten a loan on it?
Yeah. The deal Ken wholesaled me. I got a loan.
Is that the SBA one where it took like forever?
Yeah, we just, exactly. That's the one. You got a great memory. Ken and I had a relationship, right? So we felt comfortable doing that. Yeah,
for
but
those
to your
of you
point,
guys who don't know, Pardo went through brain damage to get his first deal done, and most people aren't willing to do it. The SBA is horrible to deal with at times, and I remember Pardo going through it.
It's like the best financing, but it's really difficult. Yeah.
Dude, it is. They're going to ask for a blood sample, a semen sample. They're going to ask for everything under this. I'm being facetious, but yeah, dude, I got great terms. I got the financing I needed, but you got to have your stuff dialed in. Personal financial statement, debt schedules, business plans, like bank statements, like everything, P&Ls. You got to have your stuff organized, dialed in. And it was a long process, but Stratton, it wasn't until this very moment that I realized my first deal in single family was unorthodox in that it was a short sale, like my very first deal. And my first storage deal, I ended up going through SBA. It was pretty complex.
Unorthodox.
very unorthodox. So yeah. But you know what? That's giving me confidence, because if I can take down a complicated one, I know that I can. Most are not going to be like that.
And was that deal, is that the one where the books were super messy too? Like the guy had crazy
The
books?
That wasn't the one that I think you're thinking about. The books weren't super tight, but at least they had books. I've bought storage facilities where like they don't even have books. Like
Yeah,
it's literally like on a what they would refer to as a general ledger. Like
exactly.
I have these people tell me, oh, like my books are on a general ledger, like literally like handwritten.
Yeah.
So
Both of the ones
that's
we were
not
talking
super
about, right?
uncommon. Yeah.
Do you have any other questions, Dino?
I do. Yeah. So when it comes to underwriting your deals, what's your general process? Do you feel like it's different than anybody else underwriting a deal, storage, multifamily? Do
No.
you feel like you've kind of worked it out to where it's like, okay, I've got this information that I received from whoever, right? Might be direct to the seller, might be
Yeah.
from a wholesaler, a broker, or somebody. Um, do you have a set process of like, I need to make sure I get this, this, and this? Or what would you say about how you're
Yeah.
underwriting deals?
I run a quick back of the napkin analysis. It's how Stratton and I we're taught the business. And I wouldn't say I have any proprietary or unique way of looking at deals. Where I think I've kind of shined that other people struggle is sometimes people get lost in the sauce. And what I mean by that is like they'll look at a deal and they'll try to go super deep, and then they get lost in the numbers
Mm,
and like me, I'm just trying to look at a deal within 60 seconds to 2 minutes, trying to determine, is this worth me spending more time and energy on, or is this a quick pass? And so right from the jump, right, if I look at a deal, I'll look at what's the price per square foot, right? And do I believe I can build storage in that market for less than what the price per square foot is, right? Anything under, let's just say, generally speaking, anything under 45 or 50 bucks a foot, it's got my attention, right? Sometimes I'll see deals that 80, 90, $100 price per square foot. I'm not saying that's not a deal. I'm saying I'm probably not going to spend too much time and energy underwriting and looking at that. But then more than anything, like if I just have the revenue, then I can run a quick analysis. I'll apply a 35 or a 40% operating expense ratio, depending on how big the facility is. The smaller, the higher I go on the operating expense ratio. The bigger, the lower I go. So I'll take the revenue, multiply it, one minus whatever the operating expense ratio is. That'll give me a ballpark NOI, net operating income. And then one of the things I like to do is I'll poke around in the market and I'll get a sense for what the 10 by 10s go for. And I'll just do some quick math and I'll say, hey, the net operating income is 50,000. But based on what I'm seeing in the market, I think I could take the net operating income to 75 or 80. Okay, that's worth going deeper on. So I like to just run a quick back of the napkin analysis. I'll apply a cap rate depending on what kind of market it is, maybe 8, maybe 8.5, 10 cap. I'll look and I'll see, okay, well, I think the value is this. I think the value could be this. And that's how I determine if I'm going to go deeper. Sometimes it's kind of hard to like walk people through underwriting, like without like whiteboarding it out type of thing. But big picture, that's kind of how I'm thinking about underwriting.
Are you looking at cap at all when you're doing it? Like I'll look at it, and if the cap is like egregiously low, unless I know it's an obvious value add play, I just pass.
Yeah, for the most part. If I see, 6 to 7 caps, which I feel like almost every deal I look at these days is like a 7.5 to an 8 cap. Most of the deals are priced at like a 7 to an 8 cap. It depends. If it's in a market, Stratton, that I really, really like, right? I might still look at it, even if it's priced at a 7 cap, because one mistake I think people make is that they'll go off of the price and assume that that is the price. And to me, you don't really lose anything by making an offer. But instead of just like throwing an offer out there, like I'll have a conversation with the broker and I'll say, hey, look, I'm interested. This is exactly what I'm looking for. I'll show the broker within 30, 60 seconds that I know what I'm talking about. And I'll say, look, I understand you're here. I know I can't get there. I value your time too much. I want to be respectful of it. I would likely be in this range, right? Is it even worth putting that in writing? And I'll put the ball in their court. So just because you see, what was that?
Great way to put it.
Yeah, I'll just very non-threatening, very like, hey, dude, I respect your time. Like, I don't want to insult you with this offer. I understand you're here. If you can get it, amazing. I would be here because of X, Y, Z. Is it even worth putting it in writing, right? Or can you give me some price guidance? So just because I see something listed at X and it's at a 7 cap, it doesn't mean I'll automatically just discard it, because if I really like the market, if I like the asset, and if I believe there's potential to increase it, I'll give a call, and just throw out like a range without committing to a particular number.
Hell yeah.
I think you gave great advice there. A lot of people will get way too into the weeds and get caught up, and that just reinforces the whole analysis paralysis, or you're just overdoing it, right? So that's why I think going back to the other point you made, and I reinforce this to everybody I teach too, is understand your buy box. Because if you understand your buy box, what you're looking at, then you get really good and specialized at it, as opposed to shiny object syndrome, where you're looking at a multi-unit, you're looking at a single family, you're looking at a storage, you're looking at a retail shopping center. Fill in the blank with something different that's going to require a different set of skills and knowledge and experience and a lot of brain power. So I think that's great advice.
Yeah, I agree, man.
Pardo, do you have any parting words for the people?
Wow, that's a loaded general question. But yeah, look, I would say what you're doing, like plugged into the Deal Champs, right? Like find people that you connect with, find people that are further along in the journey, or people that inspire you, and plug in, and don't go super, super wide with the people that you follow, the influencers, the thought leaders. Like find your group and then learn from them. But here's the biggest thing. Like I always talk about speed of implementation. And that's one of the things like I challenge myself with, is like, when I learn something, how quickly can I apply it, even if I fail or F it up, right? Because that in the time that people are consuming content, but not applying it, and I'm learning something, implementing, like 365 days later, I'm so much farther along than the person that's just consuming, but they're not really applying what they're learning. Like education is great, but applied knowledge, I think, is what really accelerates people's success. And then, yeah, man, just look, give yourself some grace. Like I don't have everything figured out. Like I know that there's a lot more that I don't know than things I do know. And I've committed myself to learning and growing. I humble myself. I have the mentality, guys, that I can learn something from everybody. Right. And so when you just commit to being a student in life, and then you act as a funnel, right? Like when I get good information, I try to share it with people in my network and ecosystem. Sometimes I just, like I was talking about earlier, connecting people. So just build relationships with the right people, like immerse yourself in the right communities, masterminds, groups. And that's, yeah, man, I know I threw a lot at you there, but those are some of the things that I think are at my core that I live by.
I love it, bro. Thank you so much for coming on. Dino, don't forget to pull up the summit ticker. We got to pull up the summit ticker. I forgot to do it at the beginning. Don't forget this Deal Champ Summit, April 4th and 5th, the second annual. We want to see you guys there. It's going to be an amazing event. It is the #1 event in the state of California. It's going to be insane. Guys, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And thank you so much for coming on, Pardo, the master of vibes, bro.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Dean.